Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are digging into a really powerful lesson, one that deals with grief and acceptance. And it all comes from the Buddha's famous sermon at Benares.
So, how can a tiny mustard seed teach us something so huge about grief? Well, let's just dive right in. Our story doesn't start with some abstract philosophy. No, it starts with something incredibly real and raw, a mother's devastating loss. All right, so let's meet Kisa Gotami. She's a woman whose whole world has just been completely shattered.
See, Kisa Gotami's only son has died, and she's consumed by this grief that's so powerful she just can't accept it's real. She literally carries his body through her village, going from one neighbor to the next, just desperately begging for a medicine that she knows, deep down, doesn't exist.
And her neighbors, well, they saw the tragic reality she couldn't face. They told her she has lost her senses. The boy is dead. They knew there was no medicine. But then, one man who's really moved by her pain, he suggested a different path, a completely different kind of hope.
He told her she needed to find Sakyamuni, the Buddha. And Kisa Gotami, thinking she's finally found someone who can work a miracle, rushes to him and just pleads, "Lord and Master, please give me the medicine that will cure my boy."
Okay, so this is where the story gets really interesting. The Buddha's response, well, it's not at all what she, or frankly, what any of us would expect.
So he says yes, he'll help her. But there's a catch. A very strange, very specific condition. He tells her he needs a handful of mustard seeds. Simple enough, right? But the seeds must come from a house where no one has ever lost a child, a husband, a parent, or a friend. And you know, in her joy, she's so relieved. She thinks, okay, that's easy enough. She promises to get them right away and starts her search, completely unaware that she's just been sent on a quest that will teach her something far more powerful than any medicine could.
So, this simple task, it's actually a brilliant teaching in disguise. Because what's really fascinating is how it forces her to confront the very nature of human existence face to face.
So Kisa Gotami goes from house to house. And you know what? At every single one, people feel for her. They pity her, and they willingly offer her the mustard seed she's asking for. But then comes the second part of the question, the important part. She asks, did a son or daughter, a father or mother die in your family? And at every single door, the answer, it's tragically the same.
The response was always something like this. Alas, the living are few, but the dead are many. Do not remind us of our deepest grief. Every single home was a house of mourning. She couldn't find a single family that hadn't been touched by death. So, instead of collecting mustard seeds, she ended up collecting stories of shared sorrow, and she began to realize her grief wasn't unique at all.
And this is what leads to her big aha moment. She's completely weary and hopeless sitting by the side of the road, just watching the city lights flicker on. And as night falls, she sees them get extinguished, one by one. And in that simple image, she sees it, a powerful metaphor for human life.
And she thinks to herself, how selfish am I in my grief? Death is common to all. Her journey didn't get her a single mustard seed, but what she got was so much more valuable. It was perspective. She finally understood that her grief wasn't some isolated, solitary burden. It was actually a thread connecting her to everyone, to this universal, inescapable truth about being human.
So now that she's learned this profound lesson, not from a lecture, right, but from her own lived experience, she's finally ready. She's ready to really hear what the Buddha has to say.
The Buddha basically explains what she just discovered for herself. He says the life of mortals in this world is troubled and brief and combined with pain. This is just the fundamental nature of existence. Life is messy, it's short, and yeah, it involves pain. There's just no way for anyone who is born to avoid dying. It's an unchangeable law of the world.
And he uses these really simple but powerful analogies to make his point. He says, think about it. Ripe fruits are always in danger of falling. Earthen vessels made by a potter always end up broken. And so it is with us. The life of every single mortal is always in danger of death. It doesn't matter if you're young or old, wise or foolish. It's just how it is.
And that is why the wise don't grieve. Not in the same destructive way, at least. They're not fighting reality. They understand and accept what he calls the terms of the world. And that acceptance, that's the first real step toward finding peace.
Okay, so this brings us to the core takeaway, right? The big so what? What do you actually do with this knowledge? How does this help any of us when we're actually faced with loss? While the Buddha lays out a really stark comparison here. On one hand, you have weeping and grieving. He says that path only makes the pain greater, and it makes your body suffer. You literally make yourself sick and pale. But on the other hand, there's overcoming that sorrow. He who becomes composed will find peace of mind. He'll become free from that sorrow and be blessed.
He has this amazing metaphor for it. He calls it the arrow of lamentation. Think of it like this. The initial loss is the first arrow. It comes from the outside world and it hurts. But the second arrow, the arrow of lamentation, of complaint, of grief over what's inevitable, that's an arrow we shoot into ourselves. And here's the crucial part. That second arrow is one we actually have the power to pull out.
And that leaves us with this final, really powerful image. The path to peace isn't about somehow avoiding the inevitable arrows of loss that life is going to send our way. That's impossible. Instead, it's about having the wisdom and the strength to pull out that second arrow, the arrow of lamentation, complaint, and grief. The Buddha's lesson, when you really boil it down, isn't about escaping sorrow. It's about completely transforming our relationship to it. So the question isn't if we'll face loss, but when we do. Will we have the courage to pull out the arrow?